You know those little things you do, the quirks that make you feel, well, kind of weird? What if they aren't random at all? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden logic behind your most unique traits and find out why they might actually be your greatest superpowers.
Okay, so have you ever found yourself scrolling through endless new shows only to press play on the one you've already seen like a dozen times? You know every line, you know every plot twist, and honestly, that's exactly why you love it.
Or maybe this sounds more like you. Your work history looks like it belongs to 5 different people. One minute you're deep into coding, the next you're studying neuroscience, and on the weekends you're writing poetry. And you've probably heard you just need to focus, more times than you can count.
And how about this one? Your birthday is coming up and everyone's expecting a big party, a huge deal, but you'd be perfectly happy treating it like any other Tuesday. It's not that you're sad, it's just another day. Does any of this ring a bell?
So if any of that felt a little too real, you've probably also felt that nagging suspicion that maybe something's just wrong with you, that you're a little broken, or you're not quite built for the way the rest of the world seems to operate. But what if that whole feeling is based on a total misunderstanding of how you're wired? Okay, so here's the big reframe. What we usually label on ourselves as being flawed or broken, as you can see over on the left, actually has a powerful psychological logic behind it. We're going to look at these traits through 3 specific lenses: as a survival adaptation, as part of your innate orientation, or as a very deliberate choice.
First up, let's talk adaptation. I want you to think of your childhood self as this brilliant little software engineer. They were faced with some really tricky situations, so they wrote these incredible programs to help you survive. The only catch, that software is still running in the background of your life today. A classic example of this is a psychological concept called parentification. This happens when a kid is basically forced to be the adult in the room way too early. They become the family peacemaker, the emotional support system, or the hyper-responsible one because the actual adults, well, they couldn't or wouldn't fill that role. It looks like maturity from the outside, but really it's a survival strategy.
And that childhood superpower, it usually comes with a pretty steep price tag in adulthood. Just look at this list. Does any of it sound familiar? Maybe you keep finding yourself in relationships with people who need fixing because your brain learned that's what love feels like. Or maybe you just can't relax, ever, because your nervous system was taught that resting is dangerous. That's the old software, still running the show.
This really just nails the whole paradox, doesn't it? The very same things that kept you safe in a chaotic past, like being super self-reliant or always on high alert, can become the exact things that cause anxiety and keep you feeling isolated now that your world has changed.
All right, so let's shift gears to our second category, because not all of our traits are a response to our past. Some of them are just our factory settings, our innate, built-in orientation. This isn't about what happened to you. This is just about how you're wired from the get-go.
I mean, think about it. For some people, a big event like the Super Bowl is the most exciting thing ever. For others, it's a full-on sensory assault. Or think about why some people connect so deeply with cats. It's that quiet, calm, non-demanding presence. This isn't a personality flaw. It's all about nervous system regulation. Some of us just recharge in stillness, not in constant stimulation. Neither one is better. They're just different operating systems.
This also explains why some people seem totally immune to trends. But there's a really key difference here. You've got the contrarian who defines themselves by being against whatever is popular. Their motivation is still coming from the outside. But then you have the authentic non-participant. They're motivated from the inside. They're not actively rejecting the trend. They're just so tuned in to their own signal that they hardly even notice the trend exists in the first place. See the difference? One's a reaction. The other is real freedom.
And this brings us to the whole idea of having just a few close friends. Society sometimes tells us that's a social failure. But psychologically, it can actually be a sign of incredible self-awareness. It's about choosing deep, quality connections over a huge quantity of shallow ones. It's a strategy to protect your energy and to carve out the mental space you need for deep thinking and creativity. It's not about lacking social skills. It's about having a different, more intentional social diet.
And that leads us to our final category, choice. Some of our traits aren't about trauma or wiring. They're about consciously, or maybe subconsciously, rejecting the standard scripts that society tries to hand us about what a successful life is supposed to look like.
Remember that person we talked about with too many interests? Society often writes them off as flaky or unfocused. But in the world we live in now, these people are becoming absolute gold. There's a name for them: M-shaped professionals. They build deep knowledge in several different areas. Those are the vertical legs of the M. but their real superpower is in connecting the dots between those fields. So how do you do this without just dabbling in everything? The secret is something called serial mastery. You dive deep into one thing for a season, say 6 months to a year and a half. You get fluent, you master the core of it, and then you strategically graduate. This is not quitting, it's laying down a new pillar. And the process itself trains your brain in a skill called far transfer, which is the rare ability to take an idea from one field, like music theory, and use it to solve a problem in a totally different one, like business strategy.
And this logic of conscious choice shows up in some really surprising places. Like, what about someone who never gets a tattoo? It's easy to see that as just being indecisive, but psychologists have a different term for it: strong future self-continuity. It means you have a very real, tangible connection to the person you're going to be in 20 years, and you're reluctant to make a permanent choice for that future version of you. It's not fear, it's a deep respect for your own capacity to grow and change.
And what about opting out of social media? It's so easy to see that as being antisocial or behind the times, but for a lot of people, it's an incredibly strategic choice. They're consciously opting out of what's called the performance economy, where your self-worth is constantly being measured by likes and shares. Instead, they're choosing a protection strategy, guarding their peace of mind, their privacy, and their ability to know who they are without needing an audience to validate it. Okay, so we've looked at our quirks through these 3 lenses: as adaptations, as our natural orientation, and as conscious choices. What's the big takeaway here? How do we actually use this to shift from constantly criticizing ourselves to finally understanding ourselves?
The goal was never to erase your quirks and become normal. The real goal is to become a detective of your own psychology. So the next time you do something that makes you cringe a little, get curious instead. Just ask yourself, okay, what's the logic here? Is this an old survival program running? Is this just how I'm wired? Or is this a choice I'm making? That one little shift from judgment to curiosity can change absolutely everything.
And, for anyone whose traits were forged in some really challenging times, there's this powerful concept called post-traumatic growth. It's the idea that when you go through something that really shatters your world, you don't just heal back to who you were before. You get a chance to rebuild from the ground up. And often, what you build is stronger, more compassionate, and way more connected to what really matters. You don't just bounce back, you bounce forward.
This quote is for anyone who's ever felt scattered or like they're just pulled in too many directions. What if your purpose was never to dig one single deep well? What if you were always meant to be the person who could stand back and see how the whole entire landscape connects? Maybe that thing you thought was your biggest weakness was actually your defining strength all along.
So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. We spend so much of our lives trying to fit into a box, trying to sand down our weird edges so we're a little more acceptable, a little more conventional. But what if the whole point of your unique, specific, weird combination of traits was never to be normal? What if it was to be exactly and completely and unapologetically you?